Welcome to today's episode of The Growth Hack. I'm your host, Marcus Slater, and today I have with me Mckenzie, who is our brand director, and we're going to be talking about the idea that marketing isn't magic, it's math.
Let's talk about what we should be tracking for ads and metrics, and basically why it's even important to be tracking your ad performance. So, Marcus, can you tell us what happens if you don't track your ad performance? You're just running ads and hoping for the best, but not checking any of the metrics. I mean, what bad is that going to do?
Yeah, I think when we look at those things, data is everything. In everything that you do, it drives should drive every decision you make. And if you're not tracking things appropriately, you're just out there guessing. You are basing your business growth, your business opportunity off of your own opinion of what you think is working. I've heard so many times of people who say, oh, well, we boosted a Facebook post and that's what's driving our people through the door. And they have zero data behind it other than what we received 50 clicks. We've received 5,000 clicks. That doesn't mean that anyone converted because you don't have that metric. So what may have just been an anomaly in seasonality of people coming in while you were boosting that post, the two may not be married together.
Right.
And if you're not tracking those data pieces, you're throwing away money because you don't understand, should you be amplifying that? Is that where you should be investing heavily? Maybe you should be adding $10,000 more to that because it is converting that well. Or maybe you should be moving that money somewhere else. And so making sure that you're tracking is extremely important.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I know I hear it a lot that people are just boosting those posts. And I always wonder, is that actually doing anything? I mean, what would be the difference between boosting something or actually running an ad?
Really simple DIY, get in front of your audience notion. In 3 clicks, you can have something live. Because if you think about most business owners, they don't want to learn Facebook Ads Manager. They don't want to learn how to manage those things. And so to go in and say, listen, I want to spend $5 a day to promote this event or this service or this post that I did, I can do this in a couple of clicks and it's easy. The problem with that is that it's traditionally really broad and there's just no real tie back other than the metrics of impressions and clicks. There's not a lot that you can do with that. Now you can do boosts for followers and maybe your following count grows. I know you've heard me say a lot of times, who really cares how many followers you have if your followers are buying your products or services? That number is only important to me if all of those people are buying the service. If they're just there to watch, it doesn't really matter how many followers you have. Now, it's not to say that boosting is bad. I'm not here to say you should never boost a post. I just think that you should do it very strategically. I think the best way to use post boosting is to only use it for the targeting metric, is showing it to friends of people who follow your account or who have engaged in your account. So what that does is you can then show ads to friends of the people who follow your account. And when they see that ad, it shows underneath, it says, Marcus follows this brand. So it creates that social proof. I think that's extremely valuable. You can absolutely do that. You can also do that from the ads manager, but I think that's probably the only time I would ever recommend using post boosting is if that's going to be your audience. If you're going in and you're setting the audience to every man and woman within a 15-mile radius, you're just throwing money away. There's no real strategy behind it.
Yes. Okay, so say you do have an actual ad live, not boosted post, not anything like that, but an actual ad that you've put together, looks really good, you're really proud of it, it's running, now what do we do? What should we be checking? What actual metrics should we be reading? And what should we be looking for within those metrics?
I think taking probably just one step back is really understanding and learning. If you're going to DIY this, understanding what a pixel is, or now it's called a data set, but understanding what things are tracked. Most people think about conversion tracking in the sense of you clicked an ad, you bought the product. What they don't think about is there are about 5 to 7 more steps in between there that are all conversion points, because you have to understand how an algorithm works with like Meta or Google. The entire idea is that it gets smarter at each step. Site to cart is another conversion metric. Cart to checkout page is another conversion metric. Checkout, obviously, to thank you page is another conversion metric. And so you really want to stair step those things and track all the way through. Impressions are important in the sense of making sure that there's enough people in your audience. Clicks and cost per click. This is going to eventually tell you how much do I have to spend to get 100 clicks, and hopefully I'm converting 50% of those to whatever your end goal is. What you want to start to do is opportune your audiences. I think that's the biggest break in an ad or an ad set is most people set an audience of like, hey, show this to all of my followers, and my goal is to get them to buy the product. That is as deep as they get in the strategy. What you should be doing is show this to all of my followers. This is step one. Show it to all of my followers. They see the ad. They engaged with the ad. They clicked and went to the site. So now create a sub audience of your followers who clicked and went to the site. Now you want to get in front of them with a different ad that now is talking about the products that they viewed. And then let's say they're on the site and they added to cart. Now this is a much smaller bucket. So now you can show them an ad 2-3 times a day, and it's solely focused on, hey, you forgot something in your cart. You need to go back. Maybe it's a 10% discount. That is when we talk about top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, really we're targeting those different segments throughout and tracking them, because then your algorithm starts to understand, okay, this is the type of person that's going to click the ad. This is the type of person that's going to add to cart. And this is how many times I have to show them the ad to get them to add to cart. This is the type of person that's going to check out. And maybe they have to have 7 impressions before they'll do that. The more you can break it down on your side, the smarter the algorithm will be, and the better it'll work for you.
Okay. So say I open up Facebook ads, right? And I'm looking at analytics on my Facebook ad. What am I going to see there? Can you explain kind of like if someone is, DIYing this and they open that up and they have hardly any experience with that, what are they going to see, and what should they be paying attention to? What should they really be pinpointing when they're looking at those analytics?
Sure. Yeah. So when you're opening your campaigns and things, you're going to see columns. There's one called performance and clicks. That's always the one I always suggest, auto transition to performance and clicks. When you move into that and you start to look at that, and I'm just going to actually show really quickly, you have this kind of columns option. And so when you do that, select performance and clicks. And this is when you can start to really kind of track and look at how many results are we generating, reach. So these are the things you want to look at. Reach, views is not as important, right? But frequency. So this can affect your spend highly. If your frequency is at like a 7, which just means like the people in your audience are seeing this ad like 7 times over, you're going to be spending a fortune, right? On those. So what this tells you is you need to widen your audience. There's not enough people in it. Keeping this under a 3 is preferable, even a 2 or under. But if you're at a 5-mile radius, go to a 10-mile radius in your targeting.
So essentially that frequency, if you're too narrow of a search, it's just running out of people. So it's going back to the same people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's just continuing to saturate, which is okay to a certain extent, but you don't want it to be, hey, we're showing this. So frequency is based on daily. So this is saying that one person is seeing this about 1.5 times. I don't know how they come up with like 1.3, but essentially they're seeing that daily. Now, if this is like, we're showing it to that same person 5 times daily, you're just throwing away money. Because Meta is a platform that's paid per impression. So frequency is impression. So you're paying for every time there's an impression, whereas Google is cost per click. You're only paying when an action is taken. Again, cost per result is obviously something you want to meter and look at. This changes by brand. It just depends on what the value of your end product is and what you need that to be. If you have a really high dollar product, you might be okay with spending $30 on a lead or whatever that may be. If it's super low cost, you may need to be in that $2 to $5 space. Cost per result is based on what you set up in your campaign strategy. So when you're creating a campaign and you're like, I want sales. You are going to determine in that campaign, what is that conversion goal? What is that result?
Correct.
Is it lead form? Obviously, is the result that you were seeing prior. And like I said, I would break this up in the ad set and say ad set 1 here is for add to carts. And then you have another ad set that is for checkouts. That's the goal you're going to set for that one specifically. And those are the things that you really kind of start to look at when you're building these out. So you'll see here under the tracking, we want to track website events. And then you, of course, would select what is that thing that you need to track. So that's essentially that type of metric when you're kind of looking at that result and what that is. It's all dependent on what your end goal is for that specific campaign.
Got it. Okay. That makes great sense. So what about, is there any type of tools that you use to keep track of all of this? Or do you strictly just stay within Facebook, the ads manager for that? Is there anything else that you use to kind of stay on top of it?
I'm a huge fan of leveraging AI in the process. I think that it works 24 hours a day, and I don't. I wish I could. So we like tools like there's a tool called Magix. There's a tool called Ad Espresso that we use a lot. And really those things are just to be able to leverage the AI and understand different data points. Now, while we use those tools, we still cross-reference the core platform, which is the ads manager platform, because we want to understand, are there any anomalies? Is the AI getting this right? Is it wrong? So we don't ever take suggestions from the AI at face value. We kind of take that suggestion and then do our own research and say, okay, is this accurate? And why is this happening? And should we make this change versus just clicking a button saying, okay, auto change this, and making the assumption that AI is correct. Do I think AI is correct the majority of the time? Yes. But for us, we just like to have that trust but verify factor built within our strategy. So I always recommend use a separate platform that has some type of AI integration to smart filter and create smart rules. But it's important that if you're looking to really run effectively, that you understand how the ads manager works at its core and then explore those other platforms.
Okay. What about A/B testing? What are some different things that you can test as far as the creatives, the copy? And then once you have those A/B tests going, what exactly are you looking for to say, okay, this one is clearly performing better?
I think when you look at the A/B testing, it's really about figuring out what is going to connect with that audience or that specific audience. Interestingly enough, a lot of times A/B testing can tell you that you have 2 different audiences there and you need to split those out. Especially like if you have a product or service that has a wide age range of who may use that service,
right?
There's a very different way to market to the older generation versus the younger. Like how many emojis are you using? How many are you not? Are you more formal in your conversation? The primary things that you're going to test: headlines, copy, creative. Of those, probably the most important are the creative and the headline. Creative gets people to stop. They will spend hours rewriting copy. Like, oh, this isn't good enough. I need to rewrite the copy. When in all reality, if no one stops to read it, who really cares? Creative should be the very first thing that you're like, hey, I've got 20 tests lined up to test this creative. We've seen people go away from this over photoshopped, curated content to almost what I argue are some of the worst looking ads I've ever seen in my entire life, because they get you to stop. And it does the same for me. And I've been in this industry for a long time. Pretty is not always the best scenario. Sometimes it's getting people to stop in their tracks, because we spend so much time on these platforms, we become a little bit numb. I mean, just think about yourself as a consumer. How many times you have caught yourself mindlessly just doing this? We have become so trained to catch the content we're actually interested in that we don't even you can speed read through a feed. You have to be able to capture that attention. Then the first thing everyone's going to do is read the headline after that. Because why? It's the shortest copy. We're all lazy. None of us are like, hey, actually my wife does, but let me read a 500-page book. Right. It's the same as email. You go to the headline because that is your subject line. If you're talking in email terms of, okay, now I need to know real quickly, if I'm willing to invest my time in whatever that paragraph above says, I need to know real quickly what it's about. Then, like in your hierarchy of tests, creative comes first, headline second, body copy third, and then your call to action in that body copy. That's what you would test last because it's the very last thing they're going to get to. So, most people do the reverse and they start with body copy when no one's even stopping to look at the ad.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, you have to have big enough sample sizes to really make any good decision. And if majority aren't stopping, you don't have enough people in there to know whether it's a win or a loss. Rule of thumb is you have to have at least 100 to 150 eyes on it to really make an educated decision of whether it was a pass or fail. When we look at those types of things, that's where you have to start testing those things and test everything, even the things that you don't like. I think that's the biggest thing that I always tell business owners. We're going to throw nearly everything against the wall and see if it sticks.
Right.
Because what we don't want is 6, 8, 12 months from now to look back and say, gosh, I wish we would have tried the color green. I wish we would have said it this way. Test fast. Fail fast, learn fast, right? All of those types of things apply in advertising. The faster you can get it out there, the faster you can test it, the sooner you can figure out what works, why it works, and then maximize that and double down on your ad spend because now you see the return. Don't wait 6 months to figure it out. And then you're trying to be like, well, I can't make up for those 6 months. I don't have the budget to make up for that lost time. Or if you're a seasonality based business, it's just really important that you get out of your own way, get out of your own head and say, you know what, I'm open to testing anything that may work, whether I agree or not. And I am my own worst critic in that sense. I daily tell myself it's okay to test bad things that in my opinion are bad, because not everyone feels that way. Everyone connects with a different type of content. And if that leads to a conversion, we've won, and I don't really care. At the end of the day, I don't really care if it was the prettiest picture or in my opinion, the prettiest picture.
Now, when you talked about timing, how long should we give an ad before we say, okay, this is failing or this is succeeding? I mean, obviously, you can't just let it run a day and then say, this is crap, we have to do something else. How long should you give that ad without being too long?
For social, rule of thumb is 1,000 impressions.
Okay.
So that's your meter. It's not by hour. It's not by day. It's by impression. 1,000 impressions should be telling you whether it's winning or losing. And then you have to determine what metric is off. Let's say you have 1,000 impressions and your clicks are fantastic, right? They're really high, but you're not getting the end conversion. Then that tells you there's an issue likely on your site or likely with education. Now you want to start looking at what do we need to do on the website to optimize the booking flow, the product buy flow, whatever those things are, because people might be getting stuck. In any campaign, goal one is click. If no one's clicking, it doesn't matter after that. I'll use like Facebook lead forms, a perfect example. If you have a lot of people clicking to the built-in Meta lead form, but they're not completing the lead form, then you know that there's an issue with the lead form. Maybe it's too long, right? It's asking too many questions. Everyone comes into this and they think that someone's going to fill out an entire application. And no one wants to do that. You just like started this relationship. The most you're going to get out of me is maybe my name, email, and possibly phone number. That's it. Don't ask me for anything else. I often see where they want to ask 10 questions. They're like, well, everyone should do that to be verified. And the consumer's like, I don't need that. I want to hear a little bit more. I want to start the dating relationship. So you have to start to look at, is the site, is there issues there? Do I need to change the copy? Is it too long? If you're pointing them to your website to book a service appointment or something in that nature, this is where the tracking comes into play. It's a little different on that front. On Meta lead forms, you can say, okay, they clicked, and you can also track started the lead form, but did not complete. And so that tells us, okay, there's obviously a break in there and we want to get back in front of those people who started but didn't complete the lead form because there's some type of issue, some type of barrier. Now, if you're pointing to your site, to book a service, you need to be tracking, okay, they clicked, they went to the site, they started the booking flow, but they didn't complete. Because now that tells you there's an issue in your booking flow. You're either asking too many questions. 9 times out of 10, service-based businesses who require a credit card, that is your primary issue. If you are requiring a credit card and you feel like booking conversions are low and down, remove it. Remove it for 48 hours and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to change your life. I guarantee you would rather have 100 people show up and 10 no-shows than 0 people. We live in a society where people are a little bit more guarded on adding their credit card info and all of those things. And so you need to start to remove things from your booking flow to make that process easier, because we're all busy. Everything is so quick. We want to get from point A to point B really, really fast. And booking flows can be some of the most tedious, annoying things on the planet. And I think that's where we really want to look at where we adjust those and create that conversion better. But again, click is the thing to track initially, right? Because cost per click, that's going to tell you how far your budget's going to go.
Right.
Cost per impression and cost per click. If your click cost is $20 and your daily budget is $20, you're going to be in trouble.
Right.
So like, if that is the case, what does that tell you? That tells you that your ad copy, your ad creative is not connecting with the end user. And now you have to try to answer this question. Is it that the copy's no good or the creative's no good? Or is it that your audience is bad? Are you targeting the wrong people? You know that your business is primarily women, right? But they're like, you know what? Maybe there's some men. There's some men that might want to buy this. So they'll target men and women in a 7-mile radius. And now their audience is, let's say, 190,000 people. The problem with that is if it's majority men, your clicks are going to be real low in that audience. And so it's better for you to make that audience as small as possible and say, okay, we know that we are primarily a women's brand. That is our primary. If men come in, great. Now you say, okay, we want to target in a 7-mile radius, women only that are interested in X, Y, and Z, because those are the likenesses that we find, and get that audience down to 50,000, 30,000, 20, those are the people you want to hyper focus on, especially if you're a service-based business. Let's be realistic with all the service-based memberships. Most, even in the fitness gym world, unless you're like a massive, gym franchise like a Gold's or Planet, right? It's better to do that than be like, I think I've shown it to 190,000, but I'm not sure. So like, it's much better to do that and then expand out from there. Once you've saturated that audience, then you can say, okay, let's go 1 more mile in radius. Let's add 10,000 more people into this mix. And then you can start to exclude people who have already seen your ad to make sure you're always getting in front of new people. Again, there's just a lot of, I think, just thoughts behind, like, it may be your copy, but it also may be your audience. And I think it's split down the middle. I think there's people who are terrible at writing, and you should get someone to help you do that if it is, or if you just know yourself and say, I can't get out of my own way when it comes to ads because I'm too in love with the brand and I just can't help but write it the way I write it, then it's probably time to bring in someone with a fresh perspective and someone who cares but doesn't care enough. So cares more about the data than they do the brand. And I think that is really important. But then also looking at your audience and understanding that. And if you already have consumers, you can look at that data inside your point of sale platform, whatever that is, your CRM, and start to understand, what is our average age range? What is their gender? All of those things, what are the likenesses? And use that to start to build out your ICP.
Okay. So what would you say, you have the everyday DIY person that's running ads. What would you say is their top 3 mistakes that they're making?
I would say, top 3, not testing enough. Not trying to understand the data. You really had to invest time in understanding why the cost per lead is what it is, why the impression rate is what it is, why the cost per click is. Because when you do that, you can go from metric to metric and truly understand what is affecting what and why it's affecting it and how do you fix that? Because you've got to pinpoint, do you have to fix impressions or do you have to fix conversions?
Okay. Yeah.
It could be tied to the other, right? But if conversions are bad and you just jump in on, well, there's got to be an issue with the site, but maybe it's your impressions. Maybe you're just not reaching enough people to have a big enough sample size. So I think rather than just going and looking at it as a blank sheet and saying, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's $5. This is good. Dive into it and really start to understand and look at day parting, right? Like, is there seasonality to that? Is it different by gender? If you do target both genders, maybe you are successful with women, but maybe the men's side of it are what's rising, your metrics, right? And making them look bad. And if that's the case, now you need to split out and have an ad set solely for women, ad set for men. Women, the women-based ad set can work really well. The men's one is the one that you need to be working on, not necessarily vice versa. And then the biggest thing I see is age. After you have like a week's worth of data, you can start and see like, hey, our highest click rate is coming from 24 to 35. Our highest conversion rate is coming from 54 to 65. Those are the things that now you're starting to look, and like under 24, they don't care about us. So now you just kill them all. There's no reason to have them on there if they're not driving any value, and you find those gaps. And so now you can start to break down your ad sets and say, okay, we have female ad sets for 24 to 35 because they're converting at this metric. We have male ad sets for 54 to 65 that are converting at this metric. And then you can decide on budget acquisition, because now you know, okay, well, the male 54 to 65 is converting at $7 per booked appointment. So I'm willing to invest far more money in that than the female ad set, which is converting at $30 per booked appointment. We're still okay with that conversion, but we don't want to spend majority of our budget on that one. And so again, it's all in kind of that micro side of really understanding how those metrics fall throughout there. But I think just overall is really navigating how to use the platform and understanding and staying caught up on the changes in marketing. I think so many people get stuck in the past of like, well, this is how it was done. It changes daily. The algorithms change daily, what you can target, what you can track. I mean, there used to be a time where nothing was off limits. You could track everything, you could know everything. And now you can't track certain naming conventions from e-commerce sites. And those things can affect your strategy and how you go to market. And so again, it's just reading and understanding the data, unbiasedly testing your copy and creative. And then third, spending a good budget. Listen, marketing is the driver of all things. It is arguably next to ops. I don't know how I would stagger it. That they're fairly close. It is the lifeblood of your business. When you have good marketing and you're driving in a ton of people, your employees are happier because their books are fuller, especially if they're commission-based, they're making more in like the beauty industry. So operations become a little easier. Managing staff becomes a little easier. Everyone's happy when they're making money. Now, that's not to say that, hey, there's going to be a decline in seasonality and those types of things. It's funny. I had a conversation with someone yesterday about this very same thing. And most business owners, like the first thing they cut is marketing when things go south, right? They're like, nope, we had a down month. We're cutting the budget. We're not going to market. We're just going to build a business on hope. And if that was the case, I would listen. I've got a lot of hope and optimism. And unfortunately, like that is for some reason the mentality that a lot of business owners have. And we've heard them say like, hey, well, we're going to see how it is in March and then we'll maybe come back in April, right? And you're just sitting there thinking, well, it's not going to get any better. Hey, it's only going to get worse. And then you can't make up for that 30 days. And so invest, quit thinking about it as cost. It's an investment. It's an investment into all of those things. It's an investment into the next 10 years of your business and driving that growth. And hopefully there are ways to better optimize and understand that cost on that side. So really like making sure that you're spending enough and investing enough and not coming out and saying, I can only spend $2 a day. If you can only spend $2 a day, it may be time to close up shop. That's really hard in this day and age. 15, 20 years ago, you might be able to make that happen. But today, if you don't have a budget of at least $15 a day on social, it's going to be really hard to drive good results. And social is arguably the cheapest platform, because if you go to Google with that budget, it's going to be really hard to drive volume.
How should we be reviewing those metrics to make sure that things are still right?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should always have a daily check-in, because you'd be surprised how quickly ads can plummet. Working ads can plummet really quick, right? Like you can be like, man, I just looked at this a week ago and we were crushing it. And some of that's nature of the business. And sometimes it's technology. I mean, we've seen Meta algorithms just completely have a brain fart, for lack of a better term, and it'll mess up. And Meta's really good about crediting back and saying, hey, we understand there was a glitch, but if you're not watching you can easily spend $500 of your budget and be like, we should be driving. This was really good last week. And now your cost per lead skyrocketed through the roof. And there's also things that you have to naturally look at. We just went through an election season. Those things can cause everything to skyrocket. Just think about your real estate, your house, all of those things. When there's not a lot of land left, everything goes up in price, right? And then people are coming in. There's only so many ad sections in a feed that you can have and buy up. And that is what rises those costs. We say, like, for our fitness partners, January, it's the booming, everyone get fit. I threw my life away in December. Now I'm going to get fit. But you see the big guys, the Planet Fitness, the Gold's Gym, all of those guys dump millions and millions into the market, and the cost skyrockets in advertising because there's not enough real estate. So now you're having to compete with, like, hey, I'm just trying to get a slot. I'm just trying to get a slot here. If you're not watching those things, if you're running ads in December and then come January, you can quickly use up your budget because you have to pay for those impressions. And if they become a lot more expensive, in December, you might have been paying $2, or 1 cent per impression, but you might be paying $2 per impression in January. And so that's where it gets really expensive. But a daily check is always good. In the morning or evening, it doesn't really matter. But just a daily check to say what changed day over day. And then you should have a weekly check, 7 days. Look at your last 7 days comparatively, because then you want to correlate all that data. So there's a benefit in looking day by day, and then there's a benefit of looking back 7, and then there's a benefit of looking back 30. Calendar it and say, okay, every Monday I'm going to do 7 days back. Every day, obviously, I'm just going to check in and make sure, there's no bumps and bruises, like everything's okay. Put a Band-Aid here. Your 7-day look back is when you really should be making changes. 30 days is like, how did this all correlate? And you're probably going to make some changes on 30-day look backs, but you should not only have a 30-day look back, because in the first 7 days of the month, if you don't look until 30 days, you could have fixed it on day 8, not on day 30. If you do that every month, that means you're only putting a fix in 12 times a year. When your ads are running 365, that's insane. You've got to just daily, weekly, monthly, and it's a lot. If you are an owner trying to do this yourself, it is a lot to take on. Do what you're best at. And if it is not this, invest in paying someone to do it that understands it, that has those things in place, because it's so many times I think owners think like, I can do this by myself. I can do this, but you're not thinking, okay, I have to commit my entire life to this while managing staff, while keeping up customer rapport, while hopefully getting memberships closed. And it's impossible. And you may become really good at managing your ads, but then you look back and you're like, ooh, our membership conversion. And I always say to owners, what does it matter? If I come in and I'm like, listen, AdCloud, we're going to generate 100 new appointments this month. That's fantastic. If none of them convert to a member, who really cares? If you're a membership model, that matters. And it is much more valuable for you to spend the time working on that and making sure your staff can convert that than trying to be the next John Loomer. You're going to be running ads to nothing if your business plummets on the back end. What I always say is like, there is not one agency for every brand. I think you have to find a really good agency partner that understands you as an owner, that understands your vision, your goals, understands your product and service and your industry. And we hold that pretty keen to heart at AdCloud. We don't just say, come one, come all. We do kind of in depth of like, hey, is this a good fit for both sides? Is this something that works for us? Because there are a lot of agencies that are come one, come all. We'll figure it out. We'll hack it together. We'll try to make this work. On our side, we care about you. We understand that most business owners, right, have low margins, especially if you're in the franchising space. You've invested your 401k, you're like, this is your retirement plan. And we respect that. And we want to help you get to that point, not harm that. It's neither good for you or us. I highly advise interviewing multiple agencies, really thinking about what it is that you need. And your agency that comes in should not come in talking about leads generated and clicks and impressions and all of those things. They should be talking about, what is your end goal? Is your break even 150 members, right? If you're a membership model, that's your break even, $30,000 a month. That is where you can breathe a little bit as a business owner and know like, hey, at least everyone's paid. at least everyone's paid and I'm not having to invest more dollars out of my own money outside of the business. And then where do you want to be? Like, where is your max potential? Maybe that's 300 members. Okay. Now we're going to work to put together a plan for that, because we then know, okay, we have to drive X amount of people in a month. Hopefully your membership conversion is 35, 40%. And now we can really build a pathway to success in the end goal and give you a realistic timeline of what that looks like in 12 months, 18 months. We should be fairly close. And so finding a good partner that's going to work with you from front to back, and not just say, well, we're going to come in and only grade us on how many clicks we get, which is the majority of agencies. And it's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, because in a sense of like well-rounded, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't even matter how many leads you generate. What matters is how many people book an appointment, how many people show up for that appointment, and how many people convert to a membership if that's your model. Marketing is math, right? Track, test, and optimize. Don't just guess. Really, really soul search. I mean, I think if you are a business owner, take 10 minutes today, just really kind of navigate, where is that gap? What is causing it? Be okay to say, hey, maybe I might be the issue. Like, I've got to move myself out of that and say, okay, I need to invest in an agency. I need to invest in a partner to help me get to the next level, because I've done all I can to this point. But if you are not looking at those things, and you know what, one step back really quickly before we close out, if you have an agency and they have not explained the data to you, the what's, the why's, the how's, you need to start to question that. But you should be educated enough to understand what we're doing, why we're doing, how it's working from a dashboard perspective, so that you can wake up in the morning, see that dashboard and say, okay, yeah, we're winning today, we're losing. You shouldn't have to wait to hear from me to say that. We want you to have enough understanding to know quickly at any point during the day, this is working, this is what's happening, or this is what we need to change, so that we can work together. I think that the best brands, our fastest growing brands at AdCloud, are ones where we find really great partnerships with the owners, and we have a really good banter of ideas, because we're also not boots on the ground. We manage companies across the US. And so it's hard to understand some of the locality behind it. But when owners can come to the table and say, hey, I think we might need to do this, because here in this place in California, if you go over 6 miles, it's a mountain terrain, so we shouldn't be over there. No one's coming over that or coming around that bend. Collaboration, I think, is at the forefront in keeping the ideas flowing if you want to run a successful marketing campaign. I want to thank everyone for listening to the episode, and remember to track those numbers for better results. Reach out to us if you have any questions, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.